In agriculture, it's not just the nutrition of the animal, it's now let's look at like what's happening to the plant and then what's happening to the soil. But for some reason it draws, I suppose it just draws some people. I suppose it's like being a chef or being a nurse or a doctor. Like I suppose you can't explain it, but for some reason there's this internal passion that you just love it.
This is The Crackling. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Belinda Hagan and her husband Jason left their careers on the land to take the reins of a family farm. Although they are farming pigs, the Hagans consider themselves soil farmers who run pigs across the property to help regenerate the land to create a closed-loop system. They can grow as much of the food as they can for the pigs, and in turn the pigs help aerate and turn the soil. It's an amazing model of biodiversity and healthy land management. Belinda, you're based in central Victoria. Tell us a little bit about the region and why it's great for what you're doing.
Well, we moved back to my husband's family farm, so I suppose maybe choosing the actual location probably, was a little bit out of our hands. But, being so central to everything, an hour from Melbourne, less than an hour to Bendigo, we found that that's been a real advantage to the business. So central for customer base and also, accessing whether it's abattoirs or butchers and things like that, where we've always found that that's been quite an advantage. From the climate perspective of choosing the farm for free-range pigs, possibly it didn't tick all the boxes. We're over the divide, which was always classified as can get a bit hot. We have a sandy soil type here. We're granitic sand, so we'll talk about the adaptation of what we've had to do because wallows weren't going to work, and then the way we wanted to farm them anyway. So there's been a few challenges, but at the same point too, I suppose it's lovely to be the third generation farming on this land. We've now purchased the farm off the family, so we're in control of our own destiny. So, and we've got kids coming through. So, I suppose there's that sort of historical and sentimental value as well.
Tell us about that move to the country. What triggered it, and what was it like?
So we both had gone off and worked in agriculture. Jason and I didn't meet till we were in our sort of late 20s, but we'd both worked in agriculture in professional careers, and Jason in a lot of farm management. So the decision to come back to the family farm was probably a big step, but it had a lot to do with sort of ageing parents and needing to be a bit more of a support role there as well. I suppose there was that tie for Jason to want to come back here and have a go. And I can say that, the first few years it wasn't as straightforward, and we had to take a gamble on ourselves, and particularly starting free-range pigs. I remember having a discussion where we had a very big bank and we'd done a lot of budgets and they pretty much laughed at us and we walked away and Jason and I looking at each other going, it had a fairly big agribusiness base and we were a bit like, we haven't got our rosy coloured glasses on, have we? Like, we can do this. And we actually backed ourselves. We owned a little parcel of land and a house, and we refinanced that and backed ourselves for the first few years. So actually sort of, I suppose, prove to ourselves, but also prove to the lending institutions that we could actually do it. And the first couple of years are pretty hard. Like you've got like a 9-month lag of, the pig that you make today until you actually sell her progeny. So there's a lot of expenses and overheads, that you've got to work out how to pay when you actually don't have an actual income. So, but yeah, we've been lucky. We've had 2 young kids now, and we're very much tied to here, and there is a lot of history, as in Jason's grandfather was a butcher here, owned the Hagan family butcher shop here in Toorak, and 100 years on we've started butchering. So it doesn't make you make those business decisions, but it does have those sort of nice warm emotional feelings, particularly for the family. I think there was a few phone calls. I think at the start we were both doing part-time off the farm. I think we'd worked out that I was doing 3 days a week and Jason was doing 3 days a week, and they didn't overlap, so we could try and, really run the business. And I think I remember one day getting a four-wheeler bogged and a trailer bogged, and then getting the ute bogged and getting everything bogged, and ringing Jason going with sort of some colourful language of saying that this, I don't think this is a good idea. But I suppose, we've always been very hands-on. So progressing with it, there's been, it's certainly been challenges and been colourful moments. But I think we're very lucky. We created a vision board. And we really sat down, and I suppose to leave professional careers and that certainty of income and all the, maybe the other bonuses that come with that of, 4 weeks annual leave and maybe weekends off, etc., to actually start your own business 7 days a week, not, as I say, really juggling a lot of expenses to start. It was a pretty big leap, and for us to actually make sure, being husband and wife and business partners, to make sure that we're on the same page was really important to us. So we actually sat down, and after I'd gone off and was very lucky to be involved in what's called Inspiring Farming Women. It was a course run by Kathy McGowan and a few other facilitators, and the timing of it was perfect for our beginning, because there was a lot to do with assessing your morals and values and making sure that your business and your life, portrays that. So we really sat down and created this vision board of what we wanted our future to look like together. And many aspects of that are probably our business. And we always just kept reflecting back to that. It was like, well, if that's the dream and that's the vision, are we there? Or if we're not there, it's not set in concrete, it's no one else's vision besides Jason and mine, that it's okay to change that. And I think as a couple, there was some times that we really needed to sit back down and look at that vision and say, is this what we want still? So it's like coming to that fork in the road and making sure that you're both heading in the right direction. So yeah, it's been an interesting journey. I mean, I think we're very blessed that we do majority of the time get along, and pretty much, we always laugh and say sometimes we're not on the same page. Hopefully we're in the same chapter, and hopefully we're in the same book. but it's, and in among that, as I say, 2 children coming on as well, that was in our vision, and probably wasn't quite going to plan either. But at the same point too, we had to make some decisions on the business, because I became a labour unit that wasn't as physical in the business for a couple of years with the little babies and toddlers. So the juggling that, we always just had to make sure that we were together with the same vision.
You mentioned some issues with the soil. Tell us a bit about, what they were and what you've done, and the important role that soil plays for the pigs and what you do.
So when we first started, I think we were just so focused on free-range pigs and, wanting to have those aspects of better quality of life and the animal welfare. And we probably hadn't really come up with a system. We were just starting out. We were just putting pigs in paddocks and trying to make sure that we were sort of, had some ground cover and things like that. We didn't really still understand the true advantage of where we were with the soil. And as our time had developed, you start reading and researching, and we questioned a lot about our food industry, and we sort of started to become really focused on that. Well, it starts from the ground up. We've got to really look at what's going on with our soil and what's happening with our plants, and then how that involves in our animals. And pigs are not traditionally, animals that take a lot of nutrition from plants. They're similar to you and I in our nutrition aspects. So we still knew we had to supplementary feed them, and that's another question, because I've got an animal nutrition background. But we just knew that we needed to sort of start, a bit like building a house. If you've got really bad foundations, it doesn't matter nice the house looks, it probably ends up starting to have problems down the track. So we sort of took it back a step, and we, as I say, we were really researching a lot about, I don't know, food systems and more, different types of agricultural practices, which nowadays is known as regenerative agriculture, but probably when we sort of started out, it really didn't have a term, and sustainability was talked about, but, we sort of kept going, well, doesn't sustain mean just sort of staying put? And we're like, well, we can't stay put. This farm's, it had been leased for a number of years, and it had become quite depleted, and being that it is a granitic sand, as I say, it didn't have a lot of topsoil. It really had a very short growing season, and it really just had been set stocked for so long that it really just, grew a lot of onion weed and a lot of cateweed, and again, it's that we didn't perceive them as weeds. We started to question, like, well, why are these plants growing? They're still a plant. It's our human nature of going, well, it's the wrong quality of plant, but why is the ground growing it? Well, the ground was growing it because it needed ground cover, or it was compacted, or it didn't have enough organic matter and therefore water holding capacity. So we've started really probably in the last 6 years, so we've been going 12 years, so in the last 6-7 years we've really become focused on being soil farmers. And our terms are, we don't want to sell you our soil, we're trying to build it, but our byproduct is our pork. So we're using pigs in that management system, and we could use other animals as well. We've chosen pigs, and there's a really interesting story of why Jason and I chose pigs.
Well, let's dive in there. Why did you choose pigs?
Well, we met in the pig industry. We were both single people in agriculture. Had a very mutual friend. He set us up on a blind date, and we met, and it's always a laugh, as in we have a love for pigs, and it formed our love. So yes, people, when we even got married, there was a couple of little pigs on the wedding cake, and it was a bit of a laugh. The lady at the reception centre got to know us as the pork people, the pig people, and yeah, so it's just always been a passion of ours, and we, neither of us grew up involved in the industry. I ended up sort of a bit by default in there with my nutrition, and Jason has a really big passion and skill base working with livestock, and he spent a period of time working at Western Plains Pork with Tim and Judy Crow, and he'd worked for them previously, and because he loves working with livestock, pigs are just an amazing animal. So yeah, we just always knew that pigs were going to be somehow in our future.
Do you have any stories about what it's like working with pigs and what you've learnt from them?
They're very inquisitive, very intelligent animals. They have such a great memory base. So for us, us moving them regularly, like once a week, we're moving them into like a new area, so they've got fresh ground. Or we're, if we're drafting them to be selecting them for market. As soon as we start doing all those processes, giving them, the pigs, a low stress stock handling and positive handling, they remember those experiences, and they just work so well for you. So everyone that works here has to have that mindset, and it just, they're very intelligent to work within that system. I think some of the first things we noticed, the Berkshires were a little bit different than the domestic breeds that we'd come from. So that was very much more of a maternal breed. So very good mums can get a little bit protective at times. And that's, something we've got to teach our staff, and you're always a bit aware of. But yeah, really good mums. They're just lovely pigs. Oh, and one of the first experiences, I remember having, a young female that hasn't had babies before is called a gilt. And we had some gilts coming through our farrowing system, so that's where they're birthing. And, it was just amazing to see that these animals have got really no idea of what's going on. Or I suppose all these hormones are floating around in their body, and the next minute they're realising that they're going to be birthing soon, and off they are collecting material from the paddock to make their nest. And it was just like this moment of, oh my God, that's just nature. It's so beautiful. Like she probably has no idea what's going on to her body, but she knows that she's got to do this. She knows that she's got to make a nest. And even just last week, I was up the paddock last week with a new staff member, and he's one of our older girls, and here she is collecting nesting material. And we provide them straw. It's not that they have to do that, but it's nature. The animal being given the ability to express itself. It is a beautiful thing to see.
What lured you to a career in food?
Well, I don't think we actually realised when you're farmers and you're involved in agriculture, I think sometimes you can get a little bit blasé and forget that you're actually producing food. And that might sound a little bit silly, but I think, particularly in our careers of previously was that you sold the pig, or you sold the steer, or you sold them off, and you probably didn't think maybe about that next step. And for us, then all of a sudden we become pork producers, and as I said, looking at that sort of food system, and then especially when we started supplying restaurants and then the farmers markets, it was like being exposed to the food safety standards and the regulations there, and then retail again. A lot of farmers and never sort of in that space. I mean, yes, more commonly nowadays, but let's go back sort of 20 years ago. That was quite an eye-opener for Jason and I to realise that we are producing a food and we're selling that food direct to a customer, and as I say, the next minute becoming involved in the retail aspect. So there was a few parts of the business that were very, I won't say foreign to us, but probably didn't come naturally, and sometimes it was always nicer to be up the paddock working with the animals than those aspects can feel quite daunting, I think, particularly when you start. But now, so 2 years ago, we had our butchering facility licensed on our farm. So the animals, or the pigs, still go away to be slaughtered, and they come back as whole carcasses, and we have a full-time butcher employed. And so we're really in control of that now, and it's just been a marvellous step. And if you'd asked me 10 years ago, I would have said no, seek professional when professional's required. I'm not an accountant, I don't do my own tax return, I'm not a butcher, I utilise a butcher. But we always were sort of a bit of an add-on. We had great relationships with the people who were contract butchering for us, but you sometimes become not the focus of their business. And that is perfectly fine, because that's not why they started their businesses. So we felt like we needed to take that leap again, that leap of faith. And to be honest with you, the banks, again, were very hesitant. So we managed ourselves differently with finance, and we built we think a pretty flash facility, and attracted a really great skilled butcher, and then we spent 6 months just butchering the raw pork, and then we put in a smokehouse. So we've been smoking, basically making all of our products the last 18 months. So, and it's amazing the different products that you can start to make from that nose to tail concept. So that's been really exciting.
Take us through the average day on the farm. What's life like for the pigs?
For the pigs or the people? Well, the pigs, I feel like they pretty much just eat, sleep and play and run around, and I think we give them such great quality of life, and it is really interesting the days that you're up there and you can notice a group of pigs and how they do play with each other. It's quite hilarious. And sometimes we can, because our farrowing paddocks, everything's electric fencing, but the little piglets can get out, and it's quite funny. Sometimes you can have 100 little piglets running up and down the roads playing with each other, and they'll all visitors sort of say to us, oh my gosh, and it's like, no, they don't go too far from mum. It's very similar to having children. It's all of a sudden at the playground they'll never leave your side, and as they start to get older they start to get more game, and there's always one of those ones that's very ambitious and climbing the climbing frame before everyone else. Well, here there's the same sort of thing, that some of the piglets they're very ambitious and head off, but they always come back to mum. But as staff and working with them, so, it's pretty much we feed first thing in the morning. So all our sows are still hand-fed, and that gives us the advantage. We feel it gives us an advantage of that observation. So particularly our lactating sows that have got piglets on them, you're seeing them every day. You're making sure that piglets are looking that they're feeding well and healthy, and we're making sure the sows milking well and eating and drinking. So those aspects, if you weren't literally walking in the paddock with buckets to feed them, you'd still have to do that aspect anyway. So we sort of go, we'll do both. Our dry sows, so therefore our sows that are not milking and they're pregnant or hopefully in the midst of sorting that out, and some of them live in groups with boars and things, so we still hand feed them. And that's, I think that interaction that you get with them every day, that little scratch that you give them behind the ear, them seeing people every day, there is no sense of fear at all. They're just usually very inquisitive. We have a lot of our growers on feeders, so they're filled a couple of times a week, and then, as I say, we're moving them usually once a week. So they may not see a person for that long or every day, but you're generally walking in their paddock to make sure that, all the water's working properly. So, again, and the feeders sometimes need scraping, particularly when it's been wet, to make sure they're not blocked. So there's sort of that care and maintenance that goes on, and then there's packing up fences and setting up fences and a fair bit of tractor work and strawing, and then hopefully we find some time to look at management. So therefore we're looking at how our girls are producing, whether we're selecting any young females to come like gilts back into the farm. And then because if we do the direct marketing, there's always a lot of admin of invoicing and paying bills, and then there's hopefully promotion and marketing. And I can't say that we're the best at that, but we try. And that's been the funny thing, I think, teaching our customer base, is that I think I had a little note on our website a long time ago, is that we're not IT gurus. Believe me, we're farmers, we're good at farming and all these other aspects. You can employ and have lots of businesses contracted, but you really do learn a lot about it if you do it yourself. And I think as a small business starting out, financially, we had to do it ourselves. Now, whether we pass it on or not, probably that comes back to whether that sense of control, and I think we like that authenticity that we do most of it ourselves. Again, whether we're doing it efficiently, and there are probably other people out there more skilled, but I think it gives us our honest and transparency aspect of dealing with our customers. They're dealing with us, so.
Nutrition is your expertise. Talk to me about the diet and how you approach that. Is the end product part of the equation or the life on the farm? How do you create the best diet for your pigs?
So we had questioned a lot about the food we eat before when we were starting the business, of wondering why so much allergies and cancer, started to question a lot of things, and because I had a lot of inside background to what was being put into our food systems, I started to sort of go, well, we want to do things different. So we designed a diet when we first started, and I'm probably, from a nutritionist perspective, I'm probably one of those painful customers now that says, I don't want any genetically modified products. So we don't use any US soybean meal. We don't use any canola meal that's grown in Australia because it's genetically modified now. We can't claim that we're GMO free because some of the amino acids that we use to help still supplement the diet may be grown on substrate. So we try to be as honest and transparent with our customer base, saying that, well, we try our hardest, but it's never going to be a declaration that we're free of this or we're free of that. We may be like 99.9%, but there may always be a chance. So I was really adamant of that, and that it's probably all stemmed back to, again, these morals and values of what we wanted our business to portray. We try to use a lot of natural additives. So we're using natural acidifiers and natural herbs to help with gut health. And that's probably one of the big things that happened in my light bulb moment of a nutritionist, of when we started feeding these old breed pigs, of how different they were. And, I'd come from this nutrition background of having, multiple diets, 7-8 diets across a farm, or, a piggery, to get the best potential out of those animals. And I still remember here, when we first came back here and I got involved in a local netball club and dealing with some teenagers, and they said, "Oh, what do you do, Belinda?" And I said, "Oh, I'm a nutritionist, an animal nutritionist." So they looked at me and like, "What's that?" And I'm like, so I had to work out how to explain it to people. And it was one of these things I went, if you're an athlete, you're an Olympian, do you think you have a dietitian that helps them work out their diet to get the best performance they're like, yeah. And I'm like, right, so we expect our dairy cows to produce the best quality milk and look after themselves and get back in calf and live for multiple years in the farm. So I said, we're feeding these animals like Olympians. The scary thing is they're running on a knife edge. One thing tips them over and they generally potentially could have a breakdown. Whereas the old breeds just don't have that genetic refinement into them to actually be able to feed them like Olympians. It's a bit like you and me. I'm not an Olympian. I need to be fed well and I need to be fed a balanced diet. And probably most of it, as I say, worked out to be a lot to do with gut health. They're never going to perform like Olympians. So why feed them like that? And when we first started, we started with one bagged feed. We didn't even have a silo. And then we started buying in bag weaner feed. And I can remember the weaner feed was so high powered for them. We just caused our weaners to scowl all the time. And then we were having other problems with that. And it was just, we were then feeding them lucerne hay and it went all against the nutritional principles of feeding fibre to young animals that have such a small gut capacity when you're trying to get optimum growth out of them. But then when I really thought about it, I'm like, actually, we don't need optimum growth out of them. We need these as healthy animals. And because we were feeding them grass and fibre all the time, we actually need them to have the gut health that can deal with that. So we found out about 3 or 4 years after we were running that on average our feed was about half the rate of what you find in the intensive world, and that's mainly in our grower pigs. So if we've got the paddock feed there and we've got the cover, they certainly, they love it. It's funny, the funniest thing to put pigs into a fresh paddock. They're just the funniest things to see. And but yeah, so our nutrition is, we feed one diet. I've been really particular on what goes in that. Funnily enough, nowadays we have an animal nutritionist because I've not kept up with my skill base and my the new technologies out there and the new products. So we do seek the support again of someone professional in that category. And we have a good relationship with him, and he understands that, okay, he might think we're a little bit painful because we have all these particular requirements, but I think he understands why. And he's actually a good customer, so he must enjoy our product as well. So does that influence the quality of our meat? I don't know is my answer, but I'm pretty sure there's something in our system that does, and it may not be the supplementary feed. It may be that we're aiming for here with our paddock management and soil management, and the way we pasture crop is we want green feed all year round, and we're getting to a point that we believe that we're achieving that. It does depend on the season. Yes, don't have rain all summer. It gets difficult, but we summer crop here, like we pasture crop, so it means we sow into the existing pasture different types of seeds. So again, I explain that to customers like, well, when you're in the vegetable garden, you can't grow tomatoes all year unless you provide it the glasshouse environment. So we plant seeds that like to grow over those colder periods, so a lot more brassicas and oats and things, and then we grow some that like to grow over the summer, the warmer periods, so millets and daikon radishes and sunflowers and the beautiful thing about our summer cropping is that the pigs don't really like the sunflowers. They're quite a coarse leaf, but it's absolutely beautiful to drive around the farm and see the byproduct of all these beautiful sunflowers that, they always make you smile.
You mentioned the farmers markets and also the restaurants that you're supplying to. Do you have any stories of the experiences that you've had eating your own product and the connections that you've made through these restaurants?
Absolutely. It was certainly, again, a whole new area of our lives that, we'd never, we'd always gone to restaurants and things, but to actually go to some of the, knowing the chefs and them coming and visiting the farm and really understanding why we do what we do and having that experience and then of eating that pork and knowing where it comes from, that real connection. And that's something that, I think we've still got relationships with, a couple of restaurants in Bendigo that we've supplied from day one. So I think we're, probably 11 years on, we're still supplying those same chefs and the relationships and friendships that we've built with them. And yes, sometimes, going out and a lot of people used to say to us, "Oh, do you eat a lot of pork?" I'm like, "Yeah, of course we do. We enjoy our product, but we eat a lot of pork." And you'd go to a restaurant and you'd still order your own pork because you'd want to see what they're doing with it and what flavours they're putting with it. And I still remember one of the first experiences. The first ever restaurant we started dealing with was based in Castlemaine, a chef called Alex Perry, and he was actually buying suckling pigs off us back in the days when we did them. And we hadn't even contemplated delivering and all those aspects of supplying restaurants. And one of the first times we ever went over to his restaurant in Castlemaine was just a flavour explosion of, sort of mixing, Australian culture and Asian, and just the fusion of flavours was just amazing, and it was mind-boggling. And I think that just opened our world up to, a whole another aspect of our business. And as time gone on and COVID, it certainly was good to our business, as in we do more retail now. We were very lucky, I think, in the aspect that we had many eggs in different baskets, as in we had we sell wholesale pigs into butcher shops, we sell wholesale pork into restaurants, we have retail pork into farmers markets and some providors, etc. So when one of those aspects being, COVID being very difficult in that food industry of restaurants, is that we were able to bounce back. And now the focus of us is probably the other thing that happened in that COVID period for us is that we were up to probably 9 markets a month and juggling 2 kids and then wanting to be, I still remember our daughter Hannah telling a friend, actually, she got invited to a birthday party, and telling the friend, basically handed them back the invite and sort of said, "Well, I won't be able to come because my mum and dad do markets on the weekend." And she understood the reality of our life, but it also made you sort of feel as a parent that sort of moment of going, the sacrifices that we all make for this business is now flowing into your children, which, as I say, there's the reality of life, but it's also like there has to be a work-life balance. And we had poorly done that for 10 years and had grandparents looking after children and always ferreting kids out to other people to help us get them to sports or birthday parties and things. And again, it was what we did, but I think it really brought it home that we didn't have that work-life balance. And the other thing that probably brought it home was forever with the regenerative farming about resting our paddocks. So with the system that we've incorporated here with moving the pigs weekly. They're getting that disturbance, they're fertilising the paddocks, and then they move on, and that area may not be returned to for 6 months. So it's the rest that actually helps the land recover and the plants regrow, and, you know, that build-up of all that organic material that's been pushed into the soil, it starts to compost and things. And then we reflected it ourselves and went, we never rest, we're never letting our bodies regenerate. And as we've got older, Huck, I'll tell you, your bodies don't recover like they used to. So it became a big focus of Jason and I of going that this isn't sustainable for our family, and it's not sustainable for our bodies. And we need to find a different portion of things. So we're now attending 3 markets a month. And we have a whole weekend off, and, you know, we're really trying to find that balance so we're here for a long time, like personally, but also the business, because I think if it kept going, something was going to break. And then next minute, you know, all these small producers exiting the industry is just devastating, and I understand why many of them are, but it's the same point too from a customer base. You know, it just becomes limited of what we can actually access. So yeah, we want to be here. So
you've built the most incredible brand from amazing farming practices. What do you love about what you do?
I think we're just so passionate about agriculture. I remember going through the 2010 drought, and we'd been married for a couple of years, and we'd got, well, it wasn't just the 2010 drought, was it? It was probably about 2010 assessing it, but it had gone for a number of years, and really finding that how we both worked in agriculture, that it became such a drain emotionally and mentally. Wondered, you know, I think I questioned and went, well, maybe I should go and become a teacher or a nurse or something, that you had one person in the relationship doing something different that it could just isolate you through those periods. And so we sort of seriously considered it, and then I just went, no, we both just love agriculture. And I suppose Jason grew up on a farm. I'd always had connections back to farming and agriculture. My grandparents had a farm, but it got sold off, and we'd always had that connection with rural communities. And I think that's probably what it is. I think that rural community, probably what drew me to agriculture. And then just, it's such a complex system. I mean, nutrition's such a complex system in itself, because you're looking at so many different, you know, systems that are happening and processes that are happening through the body. But in agriculture, it's not just the nutrition of the animal. It's now, let's look at like what's happening to the plant, and then what's happening to the soil. And of course, that's so all affected by our climate, which, you know, is so much out of our control. But for some reason, it draws, I suppose, just draws some people. I suppose it's like being a chef or being a nurse or a doctor. Like, I suppose you can't explain it, but for some reason, there's this internal passion that you just love it. And you know, we're so blessed to be able to do what we do, as in we've developed this system of being environmental farmers and really valuing our land and building soil, and having animals part of that system, but also having customers support us to do that, because they're paying them a premium price to allow us to do that. And it just blows me away that I'm so blessed that we've been able to develop that brand and the system, and as I say, the customer base and the loyalty that we have with our customers to be part of our journey. And that, I think that's the other thing, is that we can't do what we do without our customers, and they're a crucial part of our journey. And many of them have known us from day one, and you know, and have been part of our journey of seeing me 8.5 months pregnant, still at a farmer's market and doing farm tours, and you know, just that whole connection, I think's been so important. And you know, I think many customers come to us initially, whether it's supporting local. I think a lot of our younger generation customers come to us because they want the ethics. And then they try our product and they just keep coming back because they do feel it is value. It is a premium quality product and it has this, taste, and they're happy to pay the premium price for it. So we're very lucky.
Well, Belinda, it's amazing what you've built there, and an absolute honour to have you on the Crackling today to hear your story. Please keep in touch and we'll catch up again soon. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. This is The Crackling, a Deep in the Weeds production in partnership with PorkStar. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Stay tuned as we catch up with some of Australia's best chefs and pork producers to discover what makes Australian pork so special.